In the small village of Kalinivka, near the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, lives Galina and her husband, Nikolai Petrovich. The couple worry that their village, which they have called home since the 1970s, will be the next target for Russian troops as they advance into Brovary town.
We don't do anything except pray to God. We didn't do any harm to anyone. You can see how many icons there are.
As Galina makes tea in her kitchen, the sound of explosions pass through her broken windows. Nikolai tried to fix the windows of their house after a shell fell next to it in the early hours of the morning.
It hit next to the column. Here it is. It felt like it was cut with a knife. It fell here and exploded. The windows and warehouse were damaged, and it damaged a neighbor's house.
But the couple will not leave their village, despite Russian forces firming up their siege of Kiev.
Of course, I've got nowhere to run. I'm not going to leave my land. As my neighbor said, we are going to die here, no other place. We are not running away.
In Kalinivka, other people have boarded their windows as they prepare for mortars and artillery damage.
So my heart is heavy. We've got no place to live. There is no heating, so it is cold. And you don't know when it is going to hit again. No one knows.
European officials on Sunday said their countries were running out of room to comfortably house some of the nearly 3.5 million refugees who have fled Ukraine since Russia's invasion. Most have arrived at border points in Poland, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary, according to data compiled by the UN Refugee Agency, putting pressure on the EU countries trying to shelter them. At Poland's busiest crossing, Jorge Galindo, a communications officer for the International Organization for Migration, said there are reports that another surge of refugees may be coming.
We don't know how many people, and we don't know when they will arrive. What we can say for sure is that, after 3 weeks since the start of the war, we continue seeing flows on a daily basis, over 10,000 a day just at this border crossing alone, Medica.
More than 2 million Ukrainians have fled to Poland. In the capital of Warsaw, refugees waited in line for a third day in front of the National Stadium, which has been temporarily turned into an administrative office to register new arrivals. Natalia Strelkova arrived in Poland from an area near the Ukrainian city of Dnipro.
Rockets started to fly and residents saw it. It's difficult, it becomes scary, panic starts, and you want to run away somewhere. It's harder because of children. We were worried that something would happen to them.
Ukraine's deputy prime minister said 7 humanitarian corridors would open on Sunday to enable civilians to leave frontline areas.
The blockade of Mariupol will go down in history of responsibility for war crimes. To do this to a peaceful city, what the occupiers did to it is a terror that will be remembered for centuries to come.
This was the message from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskiy in an address late on Saturday night.
The more Russia uses terror against Ukraine, the worse the consequences will be for it.
The southern port city has seen heavy bombardment by Russian forces. Many of its 400,000 occupants have been trapped for more than 2 weeks as Russia seeks to take the city. Controlling Mariupol will help secure a land corridor to the Crimea Peninsula that Moscow annexed from Ukraine in 2014. Oleksandr Bezimov escaped from his besieged city to western Ukraine with his wife and stepdaughter.
You saw what happened to residential areas. Whole districts were destroyed. There is no communication there, no buildings. No one will rebuild it. It is a dead zone for the next 40 to 50 years, or even forever.
The bombardment has left buildings in rubble and severed central supplies of electricity, heating and water, local authorities said. Mariupol City Council said in a statement on its Telegram channel late on Saturday that several thousand residents had been taken by force to Russia. The council also said Russian forces bombed a Mariupol art school on Saturday, in which 400 residents had taken shelter, but the number of casualties was not yet known. Images were not immediately available of the school, and Reuters could not independently verify the details. On Wednesday, local authorities said a theatre where hundreds were sheltering was flattened by a Russian airstrike. This satellite image taken on March the 19th shows damage to the theatre. Russia denies hitting it. Both sides have said they will press on with peace talks, despite little progress so far. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Sunday that Moscow hoped for a comprehensive agreement on security issues, including Ukraine's neutral status. Moscow calls the assault on Ukraine, which began on February the 24th, a special operation to demilitarize and denazify its neighbor. Ukraine and its Western allies call it an aggressive war of choice. I could never imagine that a new war would start in my old age. In my worst nightmare, I could not even imagine that such massacre would be repeated. It is horrible. We have been living in Ukraine for almost 60 years. When we came here, it was so good here. In my childhood, I hid from bombardments in the corridor. We took shelter in old buildings, and it is the same now. Once the shelling of Kharkiv begins, when the air raid siren is on, we go to the corridor. We don't know if it will protect us or not. It is terrifying when young people die, when beautiful buildings collapse. You see, we saw the war and we know what it is like. Other people, the new generation, they have no idea. Most of the people of my generation are dead now, and the young generation knows nothing about it. Buildings will be rebuilt, but people who died cannot be revived. It is a disaster, but the most horrific thing is hatred. There will be hatred towards the Russians. There has been hatred, it already exists. Hatred towards Russians. I am not talking about Kharkiv, but in Russia or wherever people meet, they will hate each other. It is a disaster.
Our history and our survival and World War II. Listen to the words of the Kremlin. They used the terminology of the Nazi Party. So it's a tragedy that they wanted to exterminate all of Europe. They did not want to spare any of you, and now any of us. They called this the final solution. I know that you recognize our pain, but can you recognize why we call upon the world, upon different countries for support? We call upon you and ask for support, or even entry permits. What is this, indifference, calculations, mediation without choosing sides? I leave it to you to give me answers to my questions, because I want to point out fatal indifference. Calculations can be wrong. You can mediate between countries, but not between the bad and the good. And Israel knows well that the Iron Dome, your missile defense system, is the best. We know that you know how to protect your interests, and that you can definitely help our people, save the lives of Ukrainians, of Ukrainian Jews. We can ask a lot, why aren't we getting weapons from you? And why hasn't Israel imposed powerful sanctions on Russia, or is not putting pressure on Russian businesses? Either way, the choice is yours to make, brothers and sisters, and you must then live with your answer. The Ukrainians had their choice 80 years ago. We saved Jews. Therefore we have between us the righteous among the nations. People of Israel, now you also have a choice.